So, I'm leaving the house today, and my wife, who finds her way into almost all of my sermons, my long-suffering wife, she looked at my boots because I had not anticipated that it would snow today, and she said, "So the last time you didn't get dressed, and now you're dressed, and those boots are all wrong." And I said, "Well, I'll find a way to incorporate them." So here they are. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. A beautiful day in this beautiful, would you be mine? Could you be mine? Oh, thank you. Right, won't you be my neighbor? It's Advent, except I'm not sure, because I'm a pagan, what Advent means to all of you. I know what it means to me. And so we had a little bit of a teaching on it, almost a homily. And I wanted to talk about Advent in a much, much different way. My goal today is to blow your mind. And we're going to do it by talking about what your expectations are. Because many of us think the word Advent means expectation. It means waiting for something. But what? So last Monday, we explored the word Thanksgiving, and I was at St. Andrew's Cathedral, and I led the procession that's been going on for 20 years. And I led the procession, and I got up and I sang Fanga. We've all sang Fanga with me here, right? Okay, so imagine with like 20 dancers and drummers and 5 choirs, and it was this beautiful procession, and the place is just magnificent, and the acoustics are so amazing. I didn't have any mic or anything, and it was just this amazing, beautiful moment. And then afterwards, we had this beautiful reception and all of these foods from all of these different countries, and a woman came up to me and she said, "I really don't appreciate you people wearing a Roman collar and a peace stole in our church." This was an ecumenical, and she was feeling very ecumenical. And at the same time, the next person, almost the very next person, came up to me and said, "I really think it's inappropriate for you to wear black clothes because that's misappropriation and you don't belong to the black culture." So I had like these two things that came up there. Fortunately, I don't really think about that kind of stuff because I talked to maybe 100 people. And so maybe 10 of them said, "Are you wearing underwear?" So, those are the people I remember, But the thing is that we were at this place, and people's expectations and their beliefs color what it is that they see. So when you see the candles, and you see the tree, we have this picture of Christmas and this anticipation of the season, and this is more exciting than the opening day of hunting for people, And part of it is we have, for many, many generations, been programmed to believe that because the Advent is not the beginning, it's the waiting. And it's not just that, it's a calendar. There's an agenda here. We're going to do something for the next 4 weekends. Every Sunday, somebody's going to tell you something about something. And that was set up hundreds of years ago. The problem with that is that Advent, as we celebrate it, is less than 1,000 years old. Okay, so those of us who remember Jesus, because, we were there at that time, we remember that was like 2,000 years ago. And what we find out is that long before the Catholic Church said Advent is these things on this day for these 4 reasons, the early church also had Advent. And it had nothing to do with Christmas. What did it have to do with? Oh, where's the clicker? Oh. I get to use the clicker. I've just blown 3,000 years of oral tradition out the window with technology. Boom. That's what Advent is all about. Anybody know who she is? Who's she? He's Mother Mary. This Mother Mary is not just any Mother Mary, however. She is a Mari meaning a priestess being what John the Baptist, who is the second week of Advent, called a whore of Babylon. Yes, this Mother Mary is Our Lady of Notre Dame. Our Lady of Notre Dame is what we call a Black Madonna. Before they scoured her paint off, because she used to be painted, she was black. In the original statue that was in the chapel, that was before the Cathedral of Notre Dame, which was called the Cathedral of the Parisia, she was a statue of Mother Mary, and inside of her, they found the statue of Isis, Egyptian Isis. How did that happen? How did she get black? And why? Why, when the church, one of the most, and I think the most beautiful church in the world, burned down, did fundamentalist evangelicals all over the world say, this is the sign that she got burned and that the end is coming, and that is the sign of the apocalypse, because they quoted the Bible, and that's their vision of what happened here. All right? How did that happen? Well, as it turns out, Our Lady of Notre Dame is the most prominent of the Black Madonna churches, but there are dozens, and there are dozens of them that always go down the Mediterranean all the way into Ankara. Catholic churches with Black Madonnas. Many of them have been painted over, many of them have been hidden, some have been destroyed. The most famous one, the one that I believe is my favorite, is in the Tres Maries de la Mer, in the Camargue region of France, which is just south of here. And she's Sarah Lacali. She's Saint Sarah, who is a Black Madonna, but she's also Saraswati, Lakshmi, and Kali. Sarah La Kali. It's like, how did this happen? So let's go on an adventure. This is Europe and the day that Jesus Christ was born. The year 1. Actually, it's the year -6, if we're being picky. If you look up here, look, the Mediterranean coast is not Roman. It's not Christian. It's Hellenistic. What the Hellenistic does that mean? Okay, so we know what Semitic is, do we? Did you know the Arabs are Semitic? We see Iran. We see up there, we see this red-orange thing that goes into this little peninsula. That's the Crimea. That's the Ukraine. We know about these places now. When Jesus was born, all of these places were already celebrating Advent. How can that be? Why is it? I'll tell you why. Because these people above, these Celtic people, see that? Spain? See that? That's England up there. All of those people, they used to be in this salmon-colored region. The Celts were there before the Hellenists. The Celts are Hellenistic because they were converted. And so, before Jesus was born, literally thousands of years, this was a Celtic continent. The word Celtic comes from the Hellenists. They called them Keltoi, strangers. We have all of these words that we believe, we think we know what they mean. When I say to you, I am a pagan, what does that mean? You think I belong to a pagan religion and I practice paganism. But pagan is a word that after the Hellenists came through, the Romans came through, and anybody who were outside of Rome were the pagansis. We were pagans. It was a pejorative. They were calling us a name. We were in league with the devil, and it was okay to kill us. But back here, they called us ethanikos, heathens. We don't practice a heathen religion. We're ethanikos. We're ethnic. Ethnic cleansing came from the Hellenistic people who were getting rid of the people in the heaths. Who are the heaths? Anybody outside of the Greek islands and the Greek main, what became the Byzantine Empire. All right? Have you had enough history yet? Okay. Look. Wreaths. We didn't put these in our windows. We didn't have windows. Wreaths are pagan. Pine cones, pagan. Round ornaments found all over Europe from the Bronze Age and the Iron Age, put in trees. Oil lamps. Long before there were candles, there were oil lamps. Oil lamps were put in the middle of wreaths. Pagan. Have you ever taken a ribbon and put it in a cross on a package and put your finger in the middle and make a bow? The bow is a vow in the four directions. Pagan. Have you ever taken a candle and another candle and put them together in one candle in the middle? Call that what? The unity candle. But did you know that the heathens, the pagans, used to take the tallow from the fatted calf of the feast of my family and take the ash from the sacred hearth of the fire that never was turned off, but except for one time of the year, which we're in right now, and put them together and make candles. And my family and your family would take our candles together, and the priest or the whoever would fashion a candle, and they would light their candles together, and we would unite your family to my family before Christianity came into Europe. Pagan. You see, my point is that we are all pagans. And as pagans, the things we do, the things that we think are ours or Christian or whatever, they're not what they seem to be. In many ways, they are as many things as we believe them to be. And so, because of that, we have the right to change our mind about things, to think of things in layers, to think of things as not yours or mine, or not Christian or pagan, not white or black. life is an either or, and we don't have to choose that way. The game of separation is what keeps us apart. We are all in communion. The act of breaking bread together predates Christ by thousands of years. Of course, people have been eating for forever. But the myth of a holy person, a sacred one, a stag, or the consort of the god, or the god itself being in physical form, in corporeal form, and that is represented by bread, pervaded the Hellenistic people. Why? Because before them, the people from India came. So this is not black clothing. This is what a black priest in Nigeria would call Dutch cloth. Because the Dutch brought Indonesian batik, and it is the most popular and the most prestigious thing that a Nigerian African priest can wear is batik from Indonesia. The batik from Indonesia is Hindu. All right? I am an Indonesian. All right? And so if you were to look under here, I have a belt, and when I am wearing my ancestral clothing, I put a purse here. I wear this. I carefully pleat. Nice legs, huh? I carefully pleat my family's parang. Okay? So my family was a military family, and this represents their family. Does that sound familiar to any of you? It's Indo-European. The Celts wear pleated cloth with dyed designs on them. They wear a sporan, a belt. I have, when I'm wearing this, I have a knife called a Chris knife that I wear in my back, exactly like the knife that a Celt would wear. Why? Because they are Indo-European. They come from the Indos. So, what does all this have to do with Advent? Well, the first thing is that Advent was usually in the pagan world, and we know this now from 1,000 years, that before there were calendars, so think about that, the Advent calendar, so we only for the last several hundred years have calendars. Not even in Jesus' time did they have calendars. They weren't Gregorian, and we didn't have 7-day weeks, and we certainly did not have 7-day weeks named after the Roman gods, the sun, the moon, Tuesday, Martis, Wednesday, Odin. You see what I mean? Pagan week calendar. What we had was two things. We had the moon, and we had the sun. And right around November 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, anywhere within a 7-day period, they would declare the Advent. The Romans picked this up, called it Adventus, right? And they give us that word. And then the Christians picked it up because Constantine became a Christian, and the church then said, Adventus is the beginning of our calendar. But before that, he was the beginning of the Hellenistic calendar. Before that, it was the beginning of the pagan calendar, the Celtic calendar. Before that, it was and that calendar did not have a piece of paper. People weren't literate. We literally were not talking about that kind of a calendar. We were talking about the moon and the sun. The year was divided into 4 suns and 13 moons. Right? So November 12th, and this is the mystery, November 12th, 13th, 14th, this year's 12th. If you're to count forward for 40 days and 40 nights, okay, so we all know that that's a really important biblical idea. Well, it's also an important Hellenistic idea. Did you know that the Greek Bible was written 80 years after Christ was born, was the very first book? And it was in Greek? That's part of this mystery. Why? Why was it important for priests to go to the island of Byblos to talk about the Bible? And what's in the Bible? And what do we believe and what don't we believe? And what things from the pagan world will we adopt and what things will we discard and what things will we rename? And how will we make all of you one of us without you giving up your beliefs in the sun, your beliefs in the moon? When Constantine, the emperor, converted, he did not convert to Christianity. He converted Christianity to sun worship. It was a purely political move on his part because Italy, which was Roman, was now in the minority. And when the minority gets overwhelmed by the majority, they either have to threaten and kill them or absorb them or build a wall. I'm not being political. They decided that they were going to keep going out. And the more they went out, the more they realized that the rest of the world does not believe the same thing that they believe. And so they syncretized the world. They made the world believe what they believe by changing their beliefs and giving it different names. Advent is one of the oldest things there are. And what is it? It's fairly simple. If you count 40 days forward, you come up to the winter solstice. And around the 21st is 40 days before the advent of that calendar. Specific numbers of moons are counted to get there, or the proverbial 40 days and 40 nights. It's different everywhere around those kingdoms. So does that mean that we shouldn't celebrate Advent? Exactly the opposite. We didn't steal it from anybody. We recognized that humans recognize things. And what do they recognize? Well, one of the things that they recognize is the coming of the light. All through the Hellenistic salmon portion there, they have what they call the Trinitas, the Trinity. The Hellenists gave Rome, the Roman Catholic Church later, but Rome itself, the idea of the Trinity. Except the Hellenistic Trinity is the Father, the Son, and the Mother. Sophia is knowledge. Mari is the name of the wife of God and not the mother of God. The Catholics said, well, we can't do that. Why? Because on the third week of Advent, we have to talk about John the Baptist and your need to get baptized and wipe yourselves of your sin, and one of those sins is the belief in the whores of Babylon. John the Baptist railed about the whores of Babylon. Who are the whores of Babylon? They are the priestesses that were encamped on the outside of the synagogues because men had their religion, Judaism, and women had their religion. And they had Asherah, and they had Astarte, and they had Isis, and they had all of the goddesses of the mother gods of Babylon and Egypt for 1,000 years that they kept and keep templed to this day. And he created this idea. So the Catholic Church, in 1,000 years after Christ, wanted to get rid of certain heresies. And those heresies are ensconced in this idea that for 4 Sundays before we anticipate the birth of Christ, we want to get certain things out of you. I want to get certain things into you, all right? One of them is that the wonder of all of the things that are hidden and preserved in all of our things, all of our traditions, all of our various religions, is exactly what unites us. It is what we unite with. Communion. I really believe in the power of words. Here's a word. After we pagans, we Celts, we Paganus people, we heathens were conquered by the Hellenistic people, Rome came in. And Rome took over that same salmon swath that you see there. And right over here in Spain, in the Iberian Peninsula, these people were shoved up into this place called Britain in England. And today, you can see Morris dancers in England. You know what Morris dancers are? They're white people dressed as black people dancing dances from the Moors from 1,000 years ago. The Keltoi people do a dance that in the church that I was singing at the other day, the West African dancers did what's called the kakilambe, which is a harvest dance where you dress up like a haystack and you go and you bless and scare children and bless people, except that the Moorish people and the Morris dancers do the exact same dance up there. Why is that? Well, if you take the Celtic language and you find out where it comes from, you find that it gets watered down as it goes this way, and as you go back this way, you find that the most strong Celtic language is in the Bavarian people in Germany. And the Bavarians in Germany practice all of these rituals and have all of these ideas about their calendar and about nature, and they all are Celts. And then if you move all the way over here, the strongest language concentration is in the Crimean Peninsula and at a place called Ankara. Anybody know where Ankara is? It's Turkey. Fitting, right? The Celts, we know, brought ideas all through Europe. And one of those ideas was the idea of the light bringer. And the light bringer was the mother. And while Rome and Egypt before usurped the idea of the sun being the mother, all of these ancient cultures, the Indo-cultures of Indo-Europe, the Egyptian cultures, all believed that it was the mother that was the light. And they also believed that the moon was her reflection. This matriarchal, patriarchal shift wormed its way into our religions. And not just Christianity, but Egypt. Isis was driven out when the Pharaoh declared Ra as the only God. Monotheism, linearism, all of those things happened at the same time to all of us everywhere. But that doesn't mean that the things we believe and the things that are really true and universal amongst all of us went away. They're just hidden. Garlands, lights, the tree itself. All of those things predate Christianity. They don't belong to anybody. People came across those things all on their own because the sun always rose there and it always set there. The moon always came 28 days apart. There were always 13 in a year. Every culture everywhere recognizes its connection to nature and recognizes the connection of nature to God and the nature of man and God being the same. And that God is very often a woman as much as she is a man. We started this with a mystery. How did the Black Madonna over here at the Parisii come to be? The Parisii are Celts, and they are the people of the light, and they worship the goddess, and the goddess they worshiped was Isis. And there is a prophecy that when she is destroyed because she's hidden in the temple, that when she who is held in the temple of Jesus is destroyed, that the apocalypse, the final destruction, will happen. Except that the revelation is apocalyptic. That does not mean to destroy. Apocalypse means, in Greek, means to shed light on something. It means the revelation by the incoming of light. And what is that incoming of light? It's the Advent. We are not waiting for the light to come. We are in a 40-day period where we are appreciating the light more and more and more and more until she returns and the cycle begins over again. Why a Black Madonna? Well, it's not a really horrible mystery because our DNA now tells us that the Hellenistic people, the people that came into Europe, and the people that surrounded the Mediterranean into the places that we now look at our swarthy Mediterranean friends, all the way over to Spain, they come from Turkey. And they came from Turkey because the very first Christians were not Europeans. They were not the Semitic people. They were Africans. Africans from the Nubian people, Africans from the Ethiopian people, and what we call the Anatolian Africans. The very first converts to Christ went into Turkey, and they became mated with the Celts that the Greeks moved out. Who's this? Saint Nicholas, the Bishop of Myra, the place where myrrh comes from. One of the things we celebrate on Advent is the coming of the kings from the East. The kings from the East came from places that brought gold, not gold, gold frankincense, and frankincense and myrrh. This is Santa Claus. If anybody asks what Santa Claus has to do with Christmas, you tell them. I didn't solve any mysteries today. I'd like to take us into a meditation. The more we know, the more we don't know. Socrates tells us that there is a circle, that as that circle of knowledge, Sophia, widens, the circumference of that circle feels more and more mystery. We talk about the light, because the light is our best metaphor that we have in this moment. And as the sun wanes and grows, we feel more or less. But we feel it every month with the moon, waxing and waning. And so I'm asking you to take the mysteries of Advent, not as if I gave you any answers today, but what are the questions? Because the questions are far more important than the answers. And if we can remove ourselves from the black and white questions, the either or the or questions, the right or the wrong questions, we come to the questions that bring us to the beginning of our faith. Because we are always at the beginning of our faith. The Advent The Greek word for Advent, by the way, is parousia. Parousia means she is here. It does not mean we're waiting. Think about not what you're waiting for presents, waiting for the deluge of relatives you don't want to have to see, waiting for having to buy things, waiting for debt, or waiting for the season to end or the season to begin. The adventure I ask you to meditate on is, how can we begin to meditate on the return of the light, no matter how we see her or what we associate it or him or her with? And think about the song we sang today. Welcome back, Linda, by the way. And think about the words. Those words are the words that tell us that peace and mystery and love are the same. In the Yoruba faith, the word for God is awo, mystery. In the Mayan faith, the word for God is wakan, mystery. And so is the word for love and peace and light. Namaste.